Good evening, everyone, on this Thursday, the 30th of July, 2020, as we watch Tropical Storm Isaias depart Hispaniola and continue working its way toward the northwest, and now deal with North Carolina being, at least part of North Carolina, being within the 5-day cone of uncertainty from the official National Hurricane Center forecast. So it warrants some discussion, and we need to talk about the future of where Isaias is looking to go. Remember to make all decisions based on official National Hurricane Center forecast products, and be sure to make all decisions based upon that official data, not on other pages you see floating around social media. So here's the infrared satellite imagery of Tropical Storm Isaias. Again, it's pronounced Isaias. It's the Spanish pronunciation of the name Isaiah. It's a biblical name. And, it was a very disheveled storm for the past couple of days, and then finally it began to wrap up, and the original center was down here in this area. And then actually what happened it's not exactly clear yet, but through some interaction with the mountainous terrains here in Hispaniola, we had the mid-level circulation of the whole system kind of take over, and then you can clearly make out the swirl that is now in the top half of what you would consider the whole of Tropical Storm Isaias. But with the interaction with the mountainous terrain, it actually kind of helped the storm, I guess, to kind of ventilate and jump over Hispaniola and the Dominican Republic here. So kind of an interesting setup, but now all that matters is that we do have a bona fide tropical storm. Tropical Storm Isaias bringing life-threatening flash flooding to Puerto Rico and now to the Dominican Republic. As it continues to scoot off toward the northwest, we'll take a look at the track in just a moment. But again, as it continues heading off this way, something like that, further intensification is expected due to being over some very warm water in the Bahamas. So let's get into the discussion here. And the first thing to do when we have an active storm is always to go to the National Hurricane Center. You can just simply type in NHC and usually it comes up. So we go to the landing page here. We have Isaias here. We have an area of interest out here that is not of concern right now, but again, we do have the possibility of having an H storm, which is usually the H storms come around the end of August. So we are well ahead. 2020 continues on its record pace of very active hurricane season so far. Not all of them have, of course, made a U.S. landfall or been super impactful, but still, tropical cyclones being in the basin is still noteworthy. So we click on the information for Tropical Storm Isaias. You see key messages from the National Hurricane Center here. But for this video, I'm just going to focus simply on the forecast cone, and you can see here that with the storm currently located north of Hispaniola, just off the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, it is forecast to continue as a tropical storm as it continues to the northwest. This thing is moving rather quickly at 20 miles per hour, which is much quicker than the average tropical cyclone. So that is certainly something that we'll have to see how it impacts its intensity as well. But currently packing sustained winds of 60 miles per hour, and the pressure, I believe, was down to 997 millibars, if I'm not mistaken. I don't see it on this advisory here, but this is the latest information as of 8 p.m. Eastern. And you can see the S represents storm, and then it's expected to intensify into a hurricane as it reaches Grand Bahama Island and these larger Bahama Islands up here. Unfortunately, that were hit very hard last year by Hurricane Dorian. So again, some very hurricane wary areas in here, and unfortunately looks like Isaias is going to be right on the heels of that and continue working its way toward the northwest, maybe dealing a scrape with the space coast of Florida and then riding up the east coast again. Currently, if you were to draw a line in the center of the forecast cone, which is not wise to do because 1/3 of the time the tropical cyclone actually lies outside of the forecast cone, I should say. So the center of the storm could go anywhere in here, but remember that the impacts are going to be much farther outside than just the point on the map. Hurricanes are not a point on the map. They're a large system with large reaching impacts. Rain, wind is likely in the North Carolina and South Carolina on Monday and Tuesdays when we're looking this, 2 p.m. Monday, 2 p.m. Tuesday, and even into late Sunday night is possible. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. No pun intended with the eye there. Of course, it does not have an eye at this point, but it may very well intensify into a hurricane as it's forecast to do, and then that will be something we have to really keep an eye on here in North Carolina as it looks to get very close to the eastern half of the state, maybe making a landfall in the Outer Banks. So moving on from the National Hurricane Center, this is more of the diagnostics and the forecast tools of what's going on. So if I back out here, this is the SIMS Tropical Cyclone Group, and we can click here on Isaias. And this page comes up, and this is much more technical, but I show you this because there's a couple of things to keep in mind when we want a tropical cyclone. If it's expected to intensify, it's likely going to have warm water in front of it, deep warm water, I should say, deep ocean heat content, some very deep warm water. Of course, over the Bahamas, it's very shallow, so that does play into it, but very warm water is still there. And then, of course, shear. We don't want wind shear to be too high either, because if you have wind shear, it's going to tear the storm apart. And that, if the storm wants to strengthen, those are the things it wants in its path. So we're going to take a look here at the ocean heat content that lies ahead of Isaias and the wind shear. And if we turn on the ocean heat content, we can go here, and you can see that the warmer colors obviously indicate more favorable environment for a tropical cyclone to intensify. So right now, in the Western Caribbean, much more of a favorable environment. That's not where Isaias is going, so that is important to acknowledge, but it is going over a place where there is some warm water, that's for sure. Not necessarily deep water, so gradual intensification is likely, but should not see any kind of rapid intensification like we saw with Dorian last year, when there was a much larger pool of deep warm ocean water. That was later in the season, of course, with Dorian reaching its peak intensity on September 1 of 2019. But if I switch this over to sea surface temperature as well, you can see it's between 29.5 and 30, well, actually just 30 degrees Celsius in here. So you can remember the rule. 30s are hot, 20s are not. No, that's not it. I'm trying to remember the Celsius rule. Let's see. 30s are hot, 20s are pleasing, 10s are not, and 0 is freezing. There we go, we got it. So if we have 30 degrees Celsius, that is very warm water, above the threshold for tropical cyclones to sustain themselves. So again, gradual intensification is likely based on just the ocean heat content. Now, if we have the shear here, so if we turn on the shear right now, the center of the storm is in this area. I'm not going to get my web pin here because it does not seem to want to work on this other window, but here's the center of the storm right here, and it's going into an area of at least a brief period of much weaker shear. The green colors here indicate a likelihood of a stronger storm. So that is not what you want to see if you wanted to have the intensity of the tropical storm kept in check, but unfortunately it looks like the two ingredients that are needed are in place for Isaias to continue to strengthen gradually over the next couple of days. So that's something we have to watch. All of this is likely to change and most likely will change. So we have to keep an eye on this and see what exactly happens as Isaias continues working its way northwest. And I hesitate to show this again because you have the ubiquitous spaghetti models that show up around this time. Ubiquitous meaning, they're associated with tropical season. It's tropical season, and all of a sudden you have spaghetti models showing up all over the place showing this. But I show you this because there is remarkable agreement. Usually we have a lot of scattered models out all over the place. Excuse me just one second. I have to plug my computer in. It was Isaias information is causing it to bog down. So I show you this because of the remarkable agreement. So if I click the ECMWF, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting Ensemble model, the Euro as it's affectionately referred to, you can see some remarkable agreement here. So they're all tightly grouped, and you see these little 120s in this gray text. That indicates 5 days out. So this has a little bit of a slower approach, with 5 days being around late Monday into Tuesday morning at this point. Of course, a new suite of model graphics will be coming in later tonight, and I will share those as well, but this is what we currently have to look at. And I just show you this again because of the remarkable agreement. Usually you see there's more divergence down here, with some storms or some tracks taking it further into the Gulf of Mexico, some keeping it farther off. But around North Carolina, unfortunately, it seems like we are a magnet for these kinds of systems. As I saw someone on Twitter mention earlier, there is remarkable agreement here. So something we have to watch in terms of, Isaias may vary a bit in the next couple of days, but then longer range, there seems to be this agreement that it's going to be somewhere around North Carolina within the 4 to 5 day range. And if I back out and show you the global forecast system, or the American model as well, it's farther zoomed out because the domain is different for that model. But again, you have this tight agreement, this bold black line indicating the mean. And it's expected to be around Florida in the next couple of days, and then around North Carolina about a day and a half after that. So something we usually don't see with these storms is this degree of certainty. So there is a moderate confidence that forecasters are putting into the forecast for this saying, hey, if I go back to the National Hurricane Center forecast cone, it looks like, you can see the narrow nature of the cone, which usually the cones are much wider. It gets wider as it goes out because you have the uncertainty growing, but it looks like Isaias is going to follow that sort of a track, and the only question now remains timing and intensity and impacts. And of course, impacts we cannot figure out until the intensity and the timing of the storm are figured out as well. So we have to keep an eye on that and have to see what goes on. That's all I had for this video. I wanted to just post a quick update. I'm going to do this daily as long as Isaias and as long as North Carolina is in the cone of uncertainty in the official Hurricane Center forecast cone. I'm going to do an update video because that warrants our attention, of course. And but remember to stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center for all official information. You can also visit ncdps.gov/NCEM. That's North Carolina Emergency Management. I'll also share this link on the Facebook page and on Twitter. But this is also a great resource to follow. Their Facebook page, post updates that almost kind of synchronize with the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service Eastern Headquarters and National Weather Service local office updates about Tropical Storm Isaias and how it will impact North Carolina. So the North Carolina Department of Public Safety /NCEM is a great website to visit. Right now they don't have anything up at the moment, so I might be a little jumping the gun here, but they are a great resource to have, and I will share a bunch of other resources as well to keep you as well informed as possible. So that's all I have for this video. I just wanted to talk some basic diagnostics, and again, we have Tropical Storm Isaias, 60 miles per hour sustained winds, kind of centered right about here, and then continuing to work its way into the Bahamas and into some very hurricane-wary locations from Hurricane Dorian last year. And we will see how it approaches Florida and the intensity that it is when it gets to that point, and that will determine the forecast here in North Carolina. That's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow night. Stay safe.